welcome both. We have audiences obviously in Zoom as well as in Second Life. So you think about what can you do in a virtual world that's different than a Zoom meeting. So what we're going to cover today is what are virtual worlds? What is this space? What are avatars? We look at these people that we see in the chairs. So you see our avatars sitting on the stage in Second Life. My avatar is a younger, thinner version of me, and I really love her dreads. I just haven't been able to manage that in the physical world yet. But we're going to also talk about the affordances of immersive virtual worlds that are different than a Zoom screen. Examples of community in SL. This is kind of that's my happy place. And what does the future hold for these technologies? So that's going to be our journey today in the next now about half an hour. We'll also give about 15 minutes afterwards for your questions in both Zoom and in SL. Can everybody hear me okay? If I can see the chat in both SL and Zoom. Can everybody hear all right? Yes, yes, and yes. Okay, excellent. Thank you very, very much. Wonderful. Okay, I'm seeing the yeses show up in both worlds. Great. So what are social virtual worlds and what makes Second Life different? And with this, I'm going to pitch it to Ebbe to talk about what is Second Life as the, now I do believe, oldest, largest, one of a kind in social virtual worlds. So what does it make, what makes it different than an MMO or other virtual platforms where people can log in and participate in a chat room or all of the other ways that we connect, we think about being connected in immersive spaces. What is a social virtual world and how is Second Life different?
Well, so there are a lot of social worlds, or mostly social games. And Second Life, like those other games, are using similar technologies. I mean, we built our own technology because a virtual world is a very unique use case. So we built our own technology to do what we do. But share a lot of common traits with most games, that there are worlds, there are avatars, which are expressions of yourself. Some games you have very little control over what your avatar looks like. You might be able to change a skin or put on a hat, but fairly limited. Or the game might have no ability for you to change your appearance. And then there are the worlds that these avatars inhabit, and those could be either created by the publisher or the game studio, or they can be created by the user or some mix thereof. What makes Second Life different is that we're actually a platform company. We don't create content really. I mean, there is Mainland and Linden Homes and stuff that we do to kind of examples and whatnot, but we ultimately enable users, or residents as we call them, of the Second Life to create whatever they want. So they can create their own worlds. They can create their own assets that go into those worlds. They can create their own avatars and have almost complete control over how they choose to express themselves. And that flexibility we provide has created a sort of incredibly diverse set of worlds and content and avatars, because lots of people want to do lots of different things. So games tend to be more narrow and focused in what they're about. You're about to, you go find the diamond, or go shoot the pirates, or whatever it is, and that's sort of, the game sort of makes you do something specific. And usually game developers are very focused on this kind of this game loop of trying to get you hooked on the game dynamic, and so they kind of steer you into doing some particular actions. Second Life doesn't have any sort of game loop like that. We basically are just a world, and users can choose to do what they want. There are worlds that do have these game loops where people, or the developers of those worlds in Second Life, sort of made a game-like experience for you. But we don't really dictate what kind of content users create. So we see content that is so diverse that we have schools, we have training facilities, we have role-playing communities. So if you like sailing, go hang out with the sailors. If you like airplanes, go hang out with the aviation crew. If you are into vampires, go be a vampire. So you have everything from sort of just basic entertainment all the way to sort of business use cases of conferences and meetings and schools and all that. So it is basically as diverse, in some ways more diverse than physical space, because we've got the affordances, because there are things you can do in virtual space that you just cannot do in physical space because it's too expensive or too dangerous or just not possible, because we have weird stuff like gravity and stuff in physical space. So um, so in that end, we've also created an economy within Second Life where people can freely trade assets and services between each other. So the Linden dollar, that you can buy the Linden dollar and then you use the Linden dollar inside of Second Life to trade and transact. And that's a huge economy. It's north of $500 million USD GDP that's going on inside of Second Life. And that's basically currency changing hands. Last year, users cashed out earnings, because you can then convert your Linden dollars back to fiat currency like USD, and that was over $65 million in earnings. So people are not just entertaining themselves here; they're actually creating an income for themselves, and for a lot of people, this is their only income, their primary income. And some people here make some really good money, hundreds of thousands of dollars of yearly income in creating content. So you can go from a classroom to a music hall to listen to music to a game to just hang out on the beach with your loved ones and everything in between. Part of the, so that's kind of sums up what Second Life is and how it's different. And we've been at this we've started the preparation for our 17th birthday. So Second Life has been around for a long time. And no one yet has really created a platform with equal, I would say, diverse potential for what people do. Everything else, I would say, is much more narrow in their use cases than Second Life is. But we also see a lot of startups trying to sort of figure out how to do something similar. And over the years, there's been many who have tried, and no one's kind of succeeded to create as open and a diverse world as Second Life yet. It comes with a lot of challenges. We've being this diverse in use cases and technology to enable all of these different use cases and have an economy, which then forced us to become a fully licensed money transmitter using Tilia, which is a subsidiary of Linden Lab, so that people can freely exchange goods and services, because when money change hands at that scale, you have to have money transmission licenses to avoid money laundering and all those kinds of activities. So it comes with a lot of infrastructure to enable such a free, open sort of society as we've created here. So very, very excited about it. I mean, every day you end up tackling sort of, you have conversations around economies or self-expression and tools and everything in between. And I have customers that come from all kinds of walks of life, and so you constantly have to sort of shift what you're thinking about and who you're talking to. So love the diversity of people. And as we talked about earlier too, it's the incredible sort of strength of it is that it's this equalizer, that your physical appearance, race, sex, geography, social status, whatever, sort of in Second Life, we're sort of all on very much equal footing when it comes to who we are. So yeah, and there's a lot of places where I've seen people feeling much more comfortable expressing themselves and truly become themselves. Second Life has enabled a lot of people to discover themselves through their avatar because they feel more comfortable, you know, being who they in their head truly are or want to be. And
Right.
we've seen that sort of enable a lot of people to have much healthier, better, functional lives. So for a lot of people, it's not just Second Life; it's First Life. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the questions, maybe.
Right.
But this transition from our majority or all of our time being spent in physical space to more and more of our time being spent in virtual space, that's a trend that just continues to go and go and go. I don't know how many decades from now, or that will be more in virtual space than physical space. For some people, that's already true.
Right.
As these platforms become richer, easier, more diverse, more capable, you're going to see that transition continue where your physical time is being replaced with your virtual time until some point in the future it'll probably be the dominant way that we interact and work and do the things that we want to do in life. So it's kind of an interesting place to be in for sure.
Okay, apologies because I'm getting notices everywhere. This is one of those amazing things too about these technologies, is that especially right now managing both a Zoom screen and a Second Life screen, and we think about all of the distractions that are technology right now. One of the things too that when I think about Second Life is that you experience what is known as flow in the game space. I think that when you're in a virtual world, you can very much get caught up in flow, and you're in this space, whether you're building something or engaging with other people in a very active way. You can look up and go, oh my goodness, there went the clock, which is very different than a Zoom call. And with that, I know we have a poll for our Zoom audience that we just wanted to get a quick sense of those in Zoom, how in our poll, how many of you, go ahead and there we go, engagement, how many webinars or training sessions have you been in the last 30 days? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how engaged did you feel in those webinars? So of course, we're teaching a lot in Zoom right now, having to use Zoom as our classroom when we had to shift to remote learning. And let's see.
Oh, I was clicking like mad, and now I see this text that says host and panelists cannot vote.
Oh, mine would definitely be in the last 30 days. I think it could have been 100 plus. When I think about how many Zoom meetings per day I'm in, and on a scale of 1 to 10, sometimes you have to be very engaged. And at the same time, I'll log into a classroom, and there goes my dog again. And I'll see students that'll have their cameras off. And I have a really strong suspicion that on the other side of that camera, we would see their human with a phone or making dinner or on the, whatever other thing they might be doing. But do we have an answer to our poll yet?
Donna, this is Erica. We actually have some great questions in the chat in Zoom.
Yeah.
That we'd love to address. So maybe after we go through the poll results, let's talk about these great questions.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So it looks like the number one was 0 to 3. That's super interesting. But about almost 30% of you have been in 10 plus Zoom meetings in the last 30 days. Mine really would be. I bet we could have hit 100. And how engaged? One, not engaged at all. It looks like about the highest number, almost 30%, are about half engaged. So it's really interesting that 8% would hit 9 or 10. So when we even think about engagement in these virtual spaces, whether you're looking at a screen that looks like, whether it's the Brady Bunch or the Hollywood Squares, versus sitting in an auditorium with others, really an interesting difference when you think about digital platforms as ways of being engaged and present. And presence is another one of those things that those of us in the academic world study a lot. So how present do you feel in that space? And as the people that are in Second Life right now, how present do you feel in the Mayo Clinic amphitheater as part of this seminar? If you would just say me in local chat, feel present, or I feel present. Totally, there you go. And how many of you feel equally, oh, I can't see you could put it in chat, but think of that concept of presence on a Zoom screen versus feeling like you're sitting together in a space like this. Erica, tell me, what questions do we have?
Great.
I can just start from the top because the first
Okay, you've got them open.
They're all good there.
That'd
The first
great.
one I see is code of conduct, and if people can do whatever they want, are there incidences of violence, discrimination, racism, sexism, etc.? Of course, when you have an environment where people come together and there's free speech, some people will take advantage of that and say things that other people don't like. Some of that is completely fair and okay because people have different opinions, come from different walks of life, and not everybody agrees, so that's okay. Yes, it does happen that it crosses the line where people on purpose try to just grief others and have no intent of adding any value to the rest of the community other than just to disrupt and cause anger. And so we obviously have tools that enable people to report these people and the incidences, and we always research them. We obviously get a lot of reports we can't take action on because there's not sufficient evidence, or it really was just free speech and someone called you something that you didn't like. But in the real world, if someone did that to you on the street, you would not expect the police and come and arrest that person and put them in jail or something. So we all have to have kind of as much tolerance as possible for people doing these things. We also give people tools to protect themselves. You can just mute someone or block someone so you don't see them. So if they're annoying you and you don't want them in your space, just get rid of them. It's up to you. That's a feature that you unfortunately do not have in physical space. So in some ways, it's a safer environment in that sense. It's also in some ways sometimes a less safe because people can be anonymous and feel that through the anonymity they are sort of protected, and enables them to sort of cross the line without fear of serious repercussions. So, but we obviously work on tools to enable people to protect themselves, and we do take action, and sometimes we have to ban people from having access to the platform because they just have no other purpose in life than just make life miserable for everybody around them. So that happens, but that's just part of it's just part of free speech. The next one I liked here was a lot of sci-fi media, the fear of escapism, and are people disappearing in here and neglecting their physical lives, and when could that be crossing the line of going from cool or useful to unhealthy. Of course that happens. Just like in physical life, people tend to do too much of something. And it could be alcohol, it could be golf, it could be whatever, where you just kind of neglect the rest of your life, your community, your friends, your family, because you're so into something that you just do too much of it. I know people that run too much. It could be anything. And so, of course, in virtual spaces, we'll see kids that just play too much and sort of neglect their physical lives and social lives. But at the same time, they're learning how to communicate and function in a virtual life. And like I said, virtual lives are completely reasonable and normal. And for some people, virtual lives are a big upgrade from physical life. And as platforms and tools and the people that participate and the type of context you can create, it'll become more and more valuable for even more and more people. So yeah, if you can't control how you spend your time with various activities, whether it's physical or virtual, there are always people that sort of cross that line. But I don't think escapism is unique to virtual worlds. I think the virtual world makes people talk about escapism because it's just different. It's not something we're used to. And as that difference of a virtual world starts to get less and less different or weird or strange, the more you realize that it's not really that different from physical space at all. So that's maybe my answer to that one. Let's see if I see some other questions. Any questions you guys see?
I would like to just add to what you were just saying in terms of avatars, and because that's actually our next slide, as we think about avatars and our identity as avatars. That and that was one of the questions that was raised in terms of, you don't see, somebody said, I don't see any fat avatars, and and what about all of the isms? This is something that I teach, I present all of the time. And I would also like to recognize that we almost postponed today's seminar or webinar because of the, there's a bit of a walkout on academia that's scheduled for today as part of the ongoing Black Lives Matter protests and recognition of racial injustice. And we discussed, should we postpone this event? And at the same time, we recognized that this was an opportunity for us to talk about yet another platform where people address the issue of all of these isms in the virtual world all of the time. And we're going to talk about building communities also in a minute, and our time is flying by. But as somebody who researches identity and presence in this platform, as I mentioned, my avatar is a younger, thinner version of me. Still, as avatars go, I think I'm relatively full-figured. I actually have the exact sweater on in the physical world as you see my avatar in Second Life today. So I tried to make her look a lot like Donna, and yet I also have avatars that are dragons and a little tiny fairy, and there is this whimsy and ability to be whatever you choose to be. And someone in the audience I had a conversation with just yesterday who said, well, what do you feel about people who choose a Black avatar when they're a white human, or they're a Black human and they choose a white avatar? Is that appropriation? Is that wrong? And as I look around this audience and see, we have Shyla the super gecko, whose choice of being a super gecko is really extraordinary. I highly encourage you speak to her. Her story is also in a documentary that was produced now almost 2 years ago on Our Digital Selves, and you can find it on Our Digital Selves in YouTube. But talking about what does identity mean when you can choose. I love what I'm seeing. I think it's Cyber Squatter. It has this rainbow light around her. You can choose any identity that represents how you choose to represent yourself when you're logged in. And I would argue that my avatar is different when I go to work, my human avatar, because I put on makeup and I fix my hair and I put on different clothes than I do when I'm hanging out at home or going on a hike. We change our identity even in the physical world. In the virtual world, we have the ability to create an identity of our choosing, and we interact with others in those spaces in that same place. So as I look around at the identity of the avatars that are in here, even in the disability community, and I think I've seen a few tags from Virtual Ability where there have been people who are, Cody is one that I think of, who is part of our study, who's a cerebral palsy in a wheelchair. His avatar does not have a wheelchair because it doesn't have to. He loves to go motorcycle riding in the virtual world, and to sit next to him in the physical world and watch him riding that motorcycle in his very fit avatar in the virtual world is so joyful. So is it wrong that he doesn't represent his human form in his virtual world? But I want to stop talking and let Ebbe respond to that whole concept of, you started this in the presentation with our ability to create our own identity and customize our avatars. where in many places, the only way to do that is when you game up and you're able to get new parts or buy outfits, but you aren't really able to customize the avatar the way you are in Second Life. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we provide a tremendous amount of flexibility and freedom for people to express themselves, to be more or less what they want to be. So you can be a gecko. I chose to be kind of something somewhat similar to a younger self, but that's because I want people to, because of my role as the CEO of the company, I want to have people kind of be able to associate me with my real identity. I didn't want to sort of hide in a way because of my role. If I didn't have the role I have, I probably would be a more interesting character, whether it's some kind of animal or robot or whatever. So uh, sometimes it's social pressures or context that sort of drive people to create an expression of themselves that they think will make them, whether look better, be more successful, or whatever. I just spoke to someone yesterday who was going to join a meeting and says it was incredibly stressful to decide whether he could truly try and create something that he would feel that would be himself, and it was more of like a pirate. But he's like, can I really go to this meeting looking like a pirate? Would people sort of discount the value I could provide to that context because of my appearance? And so these are, built-in, long historical sort of societal pressures for how people want to express themselves. And luckily in Second Life, a lot of people say, screw that, I'm going to be exactly who I want to be and not really feel constrained by societal sort of norms or whatever you want to call it. So, but and there's a lot of interesting research on how your appearance affect your status or your ability to connect with those around you. And there's also a lot of great research on how, if by changing your appearance, you start to sort of understand the context of someone in that appearance. Jeremy Bailenson at Stanford has done some phenomenal research in this area about what does it mean for someone to have a very different appearance from themselves. People that have fear for public speaking, putting a different type of avatar on them so that they don't recognize themselves suddenly unleash their ability to talk in front of an audience because they don't feel that pressure. We've seen people become more giving in life by taking on the persona of, say, an older person. And it's been shown that, having the appearance of an older person increases the likelihood of you being kind to older people in society, or if you mix the race you're at, and so it's a way for people to, and you can force people to go through these transformations so that they can sort of understand, or maybe not fully understand, but get a feel for what it's like to, inhabit someone else's body, if you will. Could be very powerful in that way. But so for some of us, it's just for fun. For some of it, it's a way to sort of have a better self. For some of us, it's just pure creativity. So it's a mix of all these things. And someone said, well, why aren't there more fat people in Second Life? There are some. There's some people that they might be overweight in real life, and they again want to just, that's what they identify with, that makes them comfortable, and so they do the same thing in Second Life. But it tends to be more sort of people sort of creating some sort of idealized form of themselves, and so
Right.
ultimately it's just a freedom of expression that we're seeing here, and how much of that is colored by societal sort of pressures or stigmas or whatever, of course there's some of that, but hopefully over time, because it is a platform that sort of is an equalizer where we can all be whomever with those societal pressures will sort of be reduced. So
But
I just see it as a positive.
I had people who've been around me for any amount of time have also heard the story of Fran, as you well know, Fran Serenade, who was an 84-year-old woman with Parkinson's. She died a year ago at 92. And her, we talked about some of the expectations that our avatar should look just like us. And we had a conversation in our Parkinson's support group and said, well, what do you think about that? And Fran said, why would I want to look like me when I can look like the younger me that is the real me trapped inside of this broken old body? And, you know, that she could put on a ball gown and her son would log in and put on his tux and take his mother ballroom dancing. And she felt every bit of that 30-year-old Fran instead of a 90-year-old Fran who had a hard time walking. So it's when you talk about idealized self, it was her authentic self as she used to be. So there are also these really remarkable stories where, of course, we hear about catfish when you're reading newspaper headlines. So there's always this other nature to it.
Yeah, I love Fran. I mean, so sorry to see her pass, but
yeah.
her ability to break away from the constraint of her physical body was completely changed her life. That was extremely powerful. She could go, you know, like she said, go clubbing and swimming and horseback riding and all these things you can do in Second Life, things she just could not do in physical space. So definitely liberates a lot of people from, and it's not just physical, it's also, you know, mental. A lot of people might have phobias, don't enjoy being out in public, and they feel more safe through an avatar. I've seen lots of success with people, autistic people. I've talked to an autistic man who just could not function in physical space, but in virtual space, he was completely liberated and is running a successful business and interacting with clients. And you know, I loved, you know, when I met him in Second Life years ago. So, and so I think the early adopters of these platforms are, some of us just do it because we just like to move into the future, but for some it's a move to a better place for them. And again, as the threshold, and so they will overcome all kinds of struggles with, you know, whether it's Second Life. Second Life still has a lot to do to make it easier and all kinds of things. But they were willing to overcome all kinds of obstacles to be able to sort of get to this other life they could live. And as the complexity and the ease of use and all these things improve over time, that threshold for where it becomes valuable for more and more people, and as the context that you can go to and participate in becomes richer and richer, it'll ultimately bring even more and more people into this virtual space. So we're just going to see more of it.
That takes us right into what our next topic was going to be. And in looking at the clock, we're already at 9:45. I want to be real aware of our time. Do we have time for one question? And we've just really talked a good bit about the affordances. Erica, do you have a question you'd like to throw our way?
Yeah, we actually have two great questions from Amira. And then we also have a great question from Lily Gordon. So I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, Amira is talking about, you know, this form of fantasizing, you know, in the virtual world seems like an alternative to reading good literature. The difference is that a virtual space and other people are also fantasizing would seem to bring more risk, actual abuse or theft, etc. Am I even understanding this properly? So I guess she's trying to understand, you know, some of the risks that people put themselves at in the virtual world. And we can actually unmute her too, if that's helpful to get more clarity on her question.
Before we get to the answer, I'd also like to ask the people in our audience to respond in local chat. How many of them belong to the Second Life, go to the Second Life book club? And how many of them feel as though they are, it's looking at readers and literature. How many of you really still are part of literature as part of your life in addition to what happens here in Second Life? Yep. So with that, Ebbe.
Yeah, so with any free, sort of more or less unconstrained context where you can interact with people, there are always risks. There's always going to be someone who's trying to scheme or steal or sometimes just, for weird reasons, get off on just making your life miserable. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we do provide tools for you to choose who you interact with and don't interact with. You can befriend people you want to be part of, and you can block people that you don't want to, have in your life. So in some ways, you have a lot of control of how you create an environment for yourself that's appropriate for you, and that's very different from different people. There is no one way. So I think it's really up to individuals to have a sense for what is good and what is bad, and sort of tailor their world towards the good and away from the bad. And some bad people are very successful at being bad. I mean, I've seen incredibly sad stories of people having had connections with groups, and then they get rejected by the group because of something they did, and that can be traumatic for some people. But it's life. It ultimately comes up to individual responsibility for optimizing your life, and taking advantage of the tools and capabilities of you either blocking or walking away, or go somewhere else if the context it doesn't seem healthy for you. So yeah, ultimately, I don't think if we were to constrain this world to the point where it was absolutely guaranteed safe for everybody, it would not be an interesting place. It's because everybody's tolerance or interest is extremely different. And again, we do have obviously community guidelines and legal guidelines for what you can and cannot do within the virtual world, and we have ways for people to report people that cross the line, and if people can't behave appropriately vis-a-vis those guidelines, then they may be banned. And we don't like banning people. I mean, on planet Earth, banning someone, what does that mean? Put them in jail forever?
Right.
I mean, I'm not really I'm against the death penalty, so let's not have that in virtual worlds. And so ideally, when I run into these people that try and make my life miserable, I try and engage in conversation with them and not take it personal, just try and understand. And oftentimes I find that I can convert them from this angry person to actually a normal person by just being tolerant and engaging in dialogue. And if sometimes that doesn't work, and then I just block them, mute them, just go away. I don't want you in my life. But many times you find that these people are just people that have personal issues that makes them behave this way. And sometimes I feel I can actually help them become better selves by just engaging in dialogue, and just don't take it personal. It's so
Great.
that's my recommendation on how to sort of function in the Wild West.
Wonderful. And one more question, if we can, from Lily Gordon. It's a great one. She says, given that people may show their more authentic or aspirational self in a virtual world, how do we help protect people's data? How are companies already using people's vulnerability on these platforms to profit?
A really great question.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously take this very seriously. I mean, security, especially, I mean, we have this economy about people's identities and a lot of information about these people, whether it's their mailing address or credit cards or you know, stuff like that. And you also have these situations where people just open up and tell a lot of things about themselves to other people, and sometimes people extract that information out of you. And you know, this is social sort of engineering of sort of getting into someone's head, make them comfortable, extract information from them, and then use that information against them, you know, sometimes in horrible ways like doxing and outing people in
Right.
physical space. And especially when people reveal some really personal information about themselves, maybe their disease or their sexual orientation or whatever, because you want to communicate these things to people. You want to share things about your life with people, but you have to be really thoughtful about, you know, what type of relationship you have with people and what information you reveal about yourself in different contexts. And that again comes down to personal sort of responsibility and understanding that you can't necessarily blindly trust everybody. But you also want to be able to create context where you can approach 100% trust with someone and sort of really share your life in completely. And because that's extremely powerful. And that's how, you know, you see a lot of marriages in Second Life, thousands and thousands of marriages and divorces and so on, just like in real world, where people connect with each other and can sort of reveal sort of the most inner secrets about themselves to others. But and sometimes that can turn against you. So, and it can in the physical world as well. So it's
Right.
really not that different. So it comes to individuals sort of managing their security in that sense. The technical security we take extremely serious to make sure that hackers or whatever can't sort of extract information from our platform about you. So I think the bigger problem actually is sort of the social uh, information that people just decide to share in context that maybe they shouldn't have, and that tends up to bite them. So I hope that doesn't make people just, you know, refuse to open themselves up, uh, but you know, be thoughtful about who you open yourself up to and in which context you do that.
And I, as a researcher, I'm asking people to do that. And as a researcher, and even we were in the communities that we've been working with for the past decade, we have communities of support where people are sharing very intimate details about themselves. And part of our responsibility as researchers is also media literacy and being the advocate for the person that we're talking to and the groups that we're talking to, because they've also experienced people who claim to be somebody that they're not, just as happens in any other platform, or even that happens in face-to-face relationships, where we think we know a person only to discover they're not at all that person. So we bring all of those same attributes of our humanity with us into this world. This world just gives some people an opportunity to open up in a way that they've never felt safe to in the physical world. They're not going to bump into me at the grocery store. So, you know, and for many people, that layer of anonymity that comes through their avatar gives them another layer of a sense of, I can tell you about the real me, because you don't really know who is the real me. I want to, because we're all down to our last 5 minutes. And to me, this was one of the biggest things to talk about, is this idea of communities that happen in Second Life. And again, I'd love to ask our audience to, if they would please say, if they're part of a Second Life community, what is that community and what does that community mean to them? So for example, I've worked with a disability community. I've worked with a Parkinson's support community. I don't see, is anybody in here part of Relay? And as I'm looking for folks in the Second Life audience to talk about being a part of a virtual community where you're really creating relationships with other individuals and their avatars. If you say what those communities are in the local chat, that would be terrific. And Ebbe, what can you add to the whole idea of community in the virtual world, especially in Second Life?
Well, again, we're a platform, so we provide the tools, whether it's the ability for people to create unique context, like the one we're in right here, thanks to the Mayo Clinic, where we provide tools for people to organize and you can create friend relationships. So you have friends like you do on other social platforms, and you can one-to-one communicate with those people. You can also set up groups, so you can participate in group chat and organize groups. And so it's really, these communities are all created by users, and they could be educational groups, aviation groups, sailing groups, vampire groups, anything you can imagine. So I think, something I want to figure out over time is how do we more quickly help new users that come on board discover the contexts, social context, and spaces that would matter to them, or would be of value to them. Sometimes coming into Second Life is just a little bit bewildering because there's so much stuff, and how do you find something that you can relate to and want to be part of? So that whole content discovery mechanism, and content being people, communities, groups, worlds, whatever. And so that's a challenge I think we'll have, so that, because there is almost, I'm almost can guarantee you that there's something for everybody. But it might take a bit of effort for a new user coming in to sort of realize that exists and it's in there somewhere. It's a little bit like dropping someone off into a new city in a different country you've never been in before. And how do you know what's happening in this city? Are there other people here that like bowling? I don't know. Do they do that here? How would I know? And so, and if that's what you want to be part of, how do we help you discover that? I think is going to be an interesting challenge for us going forward. But yeah, so there's pretty much something for everybody. So just be a bit patient when you come in. If you don't find what you like, keep looking, because it's out there somewhere. And if you don't find exactly what you want, create your own. Start your own group, your own community, and that would be meaningful to you and to other people. And then now you become a creator of sorts. There's creators in Second Life of all shapes: community creators, business creators, content creators, technology creators, all this mix of people that come together and create things together. So find a group or create a group, and make it work for you. It's just like real life. You have to put effort into making it valuable to you. We're not necessarily just going to automatically make it valuable to you. You have to find your way that's relevant to you.
And thank you so much, Ebbe. It is 10 o'clock, so I want to be again, aware of the time. We still have more to talk about, so I want to say that for those who really need to go, I want to thank those people who attended today. Ebbe, I don't know if you can stick around a little bit.
My next meeting is a one-on-one with Brett. So we can just keep going for 30 minutes, and Brett and I can catch up later. So I got another 30 minutes to go.
All right, and I want to check in with Jessica and Erica. Is 30 minutes okay on the Zoom end?
Yes, I believe so. And just so everybody knows, if you do have to go, we will be emailing the recording of this presentation. So you'll be able to see all of it. And it'll also be posted on the School of Journalism and Communications YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us. We do have a post-event survey you'll also get in the email. So let us know your feedback. We love to hear your side of what you thought of this and how we can improve and do more things like this in the future. So I'll give it back to you, Donna, but I think we're good to stay on a little bit longer.
Wonderful. Well, though, we will keep going. Again, I understand that for those of you who need to go, if you want to stick around in SL or Zoom and continue to ask your questions in the local chat in Second Life or in the Zoom chat, Erica, we will get to those as best we can. So with that, because I know I've seen an awful lot of questions and really excellent questions and comments. For those who are not in Second Life, there's been a very engaged local chat going on as we've been talking about this, which is another one of those pieces of this that as we think about the way we consume media, and we've become multi-screen and multitasking beasts and beings, Second Life is one of those places where you can have multiple layers of engagement happening at the same time. Where we are speaking in voice in Second Life, there are people chatting through the text in local chat. I had up on the top screen, you would see, I have lots of folks that are, as a matter of fact, Dale Gift just sent me a notice privately that's one of the questions that's being posed by someone in Second Life. So you can have private chat, local chat, voice chat, and I could be chatting with somebody who's not even in our presence that I knew was online at the same time. So there's lots of layers of communication going on that also forces you to be engaged.
Yeah, and a lot of that emulates the tools we have available to us in physical space, right? If you're
Right.
near someone, they'll hear you. So in
Right.
Second Life, the further away you walk from someone, the less you'll be able to hear them. So that you can have multiple groups within one physical space having sort of separate conversation all at once without all interfering with each other. You can just walk from this group over here to this group over here and sort of walk, from that conversation to this conversation.
Right.
And then you obviously can use your phone, if you will, kind of to text someone, whether it's individuals or groups.
In world phone, right.
Yeah. So you kind of have an in-world phone and you have, the ability to sort of communicate in-world like you do in physical space. So we kind of emulate all the communication mechanisms that you have available to you in physical space, including, with a little bit of work, sort of actually animated gestures and stuff so that you can actually, express yourself in various ways through your avatar as well.
I think those
So it's a
scripts are
very rich communications medium, which,
right.
yeah.
And I do believe scripts are turned off here so that we wouldn't see certain gestures that some people might choose to do as a way to disrupt things that are going on in here. But there are also some really fun ways to use gestures. I could have the whole audience do the Michael Jackson Thriller dance in unison if our gestures were on, and I pass those out to everybody. So it's a really fun way to get people to dance together, to fly together, to be in bubbles floating around together. Lots of different ways to engage people.
There's scripts and animations that also make it very easy for couples to dance together.
Right.
So it's not just you dancing, but you're dancing with someone.
Right.
And that creates a to the brain, it sort of creates similar reactions as it would if you had performed these activities in physical space, which is incredibly powerful, especially for people that don't have the luxury of doing that with other people for whatever reason, or just geographically can't do it with the person they want to do it with. So there's ways to emulate a lot of the things that people want to do in expressing themselves in Second Life.
That's Barbie Alchemy, Fran's mother, hosts the Parkinson support group every Thursday morning on her
I think you mentioned daughter, right?
Her daughter, Fran's daughter.
Yeah.
Barbie, yes, is, and she has a hug disc in the middle of the room at the end of every support group. Everybody can click on the disc and we do a big group hug. And it really is, I mean, you talk about all the ways our brain kicks in and sends us all of those wonderful chemicals that give us joy or give us fear. It all works the same when you feel like you are your avatar and your avatar is experiencing that physical experience, whether it's a hug or a dance or you, as you said, there are how many weddings people fall in love with virtual kisses. So so with that, the crystal ball and what does the future hold? And as we've been talking about social isolation and pandemics and everything that's happening in our world today, recognizing even social justice and injustice and racial justice and injustice, all of the things that are very much a part of our daily conversation and living today. I have an answer for this, but Ebbe, what does the future hold, and why is this kind of platform even more important given all of these things that are happening to us as humans?
Well, I mean, right now we have, like I said, for some people, physical space has already been sufficiently constraining that they've searched out Second Life to, you know, eliminate the constraints they've had. Now we've all been in various places, have, you know, physical constraints applied to us, and so we've seen a a huge run of people coming into Second Life to find social connections, because we're social animals. We thrive on social connection. Most of us. Some introverts are kind of you know, able to sufficiently survive all by themselves, but it's pretty rare. Most of us need and thrive on social connection. So having social connections eliminated in lots of parts of the world, um, you know, creates a lot of stress for a lot of people, and it's something that they can find an escape from that problem in Second Life. Hopefully, we will not have these types of serious pandemics, although there will be more, and there will be more serious ones even than this one, and this one will continue for years. It's you know, we are a long way from having gotten, you know, through this COVID pandemic, but I don't want, I'm not hoping for the physical space to turn so bad that we have to resort to virtual to function. Ideally, we can do both. But again, the 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 usefulness of virtual worlds by us and other companies, just improving the technology, simplifying the technology, making it easier for more people to sort of set up shop, to, and I mean, if you're a teacher and you haven't heard of Second Life, like, you know, the step from there to successfully run a class in Second Life, it's not trivial. You know, you have to figure some stuff out, and what can we do to just make it so simple that you don't have to like spend a ton of energy creating that. um, there's so many different types of contexts for which we can just make it easier for people. But if people could just on demand create the experience they want and have it populated with the people they want and be able to perform the activities they want without a bunch of technical hurdles, then platforms like this will just start to, you know, be useful in what traditionally is only being used in physical space more and more and more. So this, and we're right now training a whole generation of kids, Minecraft, Roblox, whatever, where interacting with other people in unique environments, in interacting with environments in virtual space is just completely natural. I mean, you should see my kids on the keyboard, you know, working around virtual worlds and interacting with other people, whether it's games or virtual worlds. It's just completely natural to them. So would it make sense for them to work in this environment when they grow up, go to school in this environment, get, you know, go to their doctors in this environment, go to their psychiatrist in this environment, you know, meet friends and loved ones in this environment? Of course. You know, so it's just going to, you know, become more and more the way of, you know, part of how we extend our abilities in life. You know, the ability of connect with people we otherwise couldn't possibly reach. How on earth would we get this group of people together in physical space, even without COVID, right? Just to travel and hotels, and like it's amazing what people are willing to endure in physical space to connect with other people, when you could just, you know, walk into your computer room or, you know, use your iPad or whatever and just go there. Like, so in some ways, even though this seems weird and difficult and new, in some ways it's so much easier than the physical equivalent of doing this. So, and as more and more people just get trained of functioning in 3D spaces like Second Life, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. You know, our job is to, you know, capture as much of the market as we can by delivering better solutions and easier solutions and more powerful ways for people to express themselves and make money in a world like this. And um, so, you know, whether it's us or other companies or other technologies, it's just a fact that this will become more and more part of how humans interact for all the things they want to do in life. I mean, there's like really just a couple of things that I've thought of that you cannot do in a virtual world. You know, you can't eat, so you have to find food in physical space, and you can't procreate, so you can't really make, you know, physical babies unless you step away from the computer and do something else. So, but other than that, like almost everything else can be done in virtual worlds. And with VR, which is, you know, it's going to continue to grow. Not only can you look at the virtual world, but you can be in the virtual world, which is another level of immersion that will be added on top. And we're seeing more of that growing as well. So I'm looking forward to be able to have Second Life do that in the future. We we monkeyed with that a few years back, but we realized that we had to do more work to enable that, to get it to be performant and comfortable enough. And we still have to wait for a lot of the hardware to sort of get more commonly used and stuff for us to focus on it. We did a lot of work on a product called Sansar that we ended up selling to explore that. So we've learned a lot about that. And I find it another level of immersion when I'm not only looking at it on my screen, but I can walk into the screen and be amongst you and
Right.
really walk up to you and hug you, you know, not with the same physical connection, but have that same feeling. So, and then it is even more directly sort of straight into your cortex of being there. And then you can go through all kinds of activities, and it's extremely powerful for learning, for teaching, and have people be able to do things and learn things, because we know that people doing things is a better learning mechanism than just listening or watching. And so in the virtual world here, you can do things, you can interact with the environment and learn that way. So, and it's also not just a tool in that way, because it's with its economy, it's also a possibility for you to make money. And today, you know, $65 million people cashed out last year in earnings, and that's just going to continue to grow. And so there are lots of people making their living within the digital economy of Second Life. So it's just going to continue to grow, get more powerful and more obvious tool for a world for whom this is still kind of not even within their mind of thinking yet. So we have a few billion people to convert still, but we'll get there.
Just a few billion,
Yeah.
but well, thank you so very much, Ebbe. And for those who are still in the Zoom call, you see Brian who in the Zoom call, who is Svea Moraine from the Mayo Clinic. Thank you again, Svea. Brian, thank you, Ebbe. And we do have, I know I've seen questions popping up. Erica, did you want to take us back to a few more audience questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Jenny asked some great questions kind of earlier in the presentation, and we're going to go ahead and unmute her so she can ask you guys the questions live. You'll go just see her, but you can definitely hear her. So Jenny, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great. Go ahead.
Okay, excellent. So I know we did talk about this some, but I'm just curious, basically, you know, obviously you can choose to look how you want to in this world, but there's still that influence from the real world, you know, that could potentially be playing into how someone chooses to present themselves. Of course, the other members of the virtual world are also bringing in certain prejudices and cultural baggage into this space. So unless someone creates an avatar that's thin, young, white, abled, etc., it seems like they would still be perceived through all those various isms: racism, sexism, ableism, ageism. But on the other hand, of course, you've mentioned how it's freeing for some people to shed some of that baggage by having a different avatar in this world. So I'm just curious to know more about that balance of, you know, being able to express all aspects of your identity, but also having to navigate ingrained prejudices. So all that to say, I'm curious if you feel like Second Life has a different culture around those aspects of identity. if you feel like there are still those hurdles and difficulties and barriers around that, and how does that incentivize people to present themselves a certain way?
If I can start very briefly. Again, and Jenny will be joining our program in the fall, and I so look forward to digging into this with you at great length.
Yeah, likewise.
Super exciting. It's one of the things, I think it's now been 10 years ago. There's an artist that's out of Southern California. She's in LA, who did a book called 1000 Avatars. She got 1,000 people to, she photographed their avatars and made a book out of it. And she told the story of the evolution of the influence her avatar had on a human, and how it changed the way she looked at herself. And that I own the book, my avatar is in the book, and yes, Christine Schumacher, thank you. And what I would love to do as a researcher is take a look at those 1,000 avatars. How many of them are still active in Second Life today? And what does their avatar look like today? Because anecdotally, as somebody who spends plenty of time in this space, I have watched the avatars go from very tall, thin, even the graphics were just far more primitive than they are now. That if you go to a big group event, maybe a concert, you find the women are way curvier than they used to be. Women's bodies are typically way more full figured now, that if you're a skinny avatar, you almost look unusual and unhealthy. And that male avatars originally, as you see local chat saying, way curvier. And the male avatars originally were all these giant muscle men. And today you see male avatars that are way more natural and realistic in terms of sizes. Not everybody is 7 feet tall anymore. It's almost like the humans have created the equalizer even within the virtual world. That's from my anthropological observation. I don't have evidence to back that up, but I'd love to get it through research. It's on my list of things to do. And
yeah, that's really interesting.
And I'll turn off my mic and let Ebbe also respond.
We can't just have people walk into Second Life and instantly have their sort of previous prejudices and everything just somehow just instantly be erased, and they just start over from scratch and walk into a world where sort of all that pre-programming we've been inundated with is suddenly just not present or there. But at least we do create an environment where people can create a context for them where they can eliminate things that might have stand in their way to be who they want to be. And yeah, some people will make themselves into something that they think other people want them to be because of biases and what have you. So we obviously are trying making sure that the platform doesn't steer you in a particular direction. So we try to be very diverse in sort of the default avatars we offer, so that people can sort of not be to this or that. But I also would say that if this was a product that had its origin in, let's say, Japan or China, you would look different and feel different, because we've had less influence from that type of audience than we have for more of a Western audience, kind of because of where Second Life started up. And I'm hoping that as we become more global, and we're doing a lot of work now on the back end to be able to have a more performant global presence, that it'll be easier for people around the globe to sort of participate in creating a bigger mix of people that are participating in the world. And so I think our job is to, not try and steer and influence too much in whatever direction things should go. It should be up to the people using the platform to decide what they want it to be. As soon as we start to censor or force or constrain or whatever, I think we kind of just get in trouble. So I think it's better for us to let the market, let the users sort of dictate what they want it to be, and give them the tools to manage that sort of the freedom that we enable, because with that freedom comes, you know, risks, and people will create things. We have a saying of, it's called TTP. When you enable people to create whatever, what is the time to penis? You know, that someone will just create that thing that, you know, so, and there's nothing we can do to sort of force people or enable, disable the ability for people to create that kind of content, whether it's verbal content or virtual, you know, visual content. So it's just, for us, it's about giving the tools for people to create and express themselves, and the tools for managing their safety. And then as an organization, we take it very seriously to protect people's privacy. You should be able to be anonymous. You should be able to express yourself and not be concerned that we somehow participate in the distribution of what you're saying or doing. And so we're not engaged in advertising. We do not sell data to any third parties for any of the things we collect. We don't collect sort of biometric information that we can sort of, but we also will collect information to make the platform better and to make, you know, the world better, and your experience of the world better. But we're extremely, you know, sensitive to, you know, protecting people's privacy within the world. I did see the comment from Amira. She's still not sold on this at all, and feel that this is a, you know, people stepping away from the physical space and going into the virtual space. She seems to still think is a negative, and the idea of talking to a shrink in this world just doesn't appeal to her at all. So you know, I posted a link there, which is Dragster's documentary on that maybe will give you some insights into how extremely powerful this has been for other people that needed a platform like this to have better lives. So that's something to explore, and just maybe try and get into other people's heads as to their needs when you think about this, because not everybody have the same privileges or luxuries that many of us have in how we can function in physical space. And, you know, maybe your best psychiatrist is 500 miles away.
Right.
Like, why would you not enable someone to engage with that people for a therapy session in private through this platform? And you could do it over the phone, you can do it over video like Zoom, or you can do it in a virtual world like Second Life, where the sense of presence and connecting with another human being or other human beings becomes more becomes much stronger, and actually can add a lot of value to just other types of communications. So think of it as a communications platform with added stuff for making your communication richer and stronger. That's maybe a way for people to sort of try and relate to what we're doing.
I think also it's, Alumnia was here earlier. I think she's since logged off, and she made a comment in the local chat in Second Life that she's dyslexic. So for her, reading a book is, oh, Alumnia is still there. Hello, Alumnia. Reading is difficult. I raised a dyslexic son who, for the life of him, cannot read. But he's a very creative, literary, intelligent person. He just processes it different. So understanding how this could light up all of the ways to think about literature, to think about all the ways to think about others. I know over 10 years ago, IBM did a project in here where they actually assigned avatar bodies to a group of people as part of their human resources training. So the CEO might, you might have a Black female housekeeping staff person suddenly in a white male suit, in a body in a suit. and vice versa, you know, where you might have suits suddenly find themselves in staff positions and from a different race or a different gender, and put them in a meeting and had them interact. And it was stunning how quickly they went into the role of the skin they were wearing and the outfit they were wearing, and how quickly they also felt the oppression of the suits. And it made them stop and think about, oh, that's how they feel when they are treated this way. Think about the many, many, many scenarios you can create through embodiment and exploration of identity. Again, in my dissertation research, I was, one of my study participants was a psychiatry faculty member from a very elite university, who said that it wasn't until Second Life that she realized that if she had a student that would come into her office for office hours and had dreads, she immediately assumed that this student was a stoner, and she tuned him out, until she'd been in Second Life and discovered she'd sit in meetings with furries, people who have an animal avatar, and discovered that in their conversations, like at Sims philosophy discussions, that the animal that furry might have been the most thoughtful person in the circle. So it made her stop thinking about people by their external appearances and instead listen to what they were saying. There's really interesting psychology behind all of this, sociology, anthropology, archaeology behind all of this, that I think it's up to us to continue to explore. And we are now at 1 minute before 10:30. Ebbe, did you have any final thoughts? I hate to cut off questions, and I would like to say, if you want to continue sending us the questions, I will put in local chat, and I think the dzdavis@uoregon.edu is my email. Feel free to email me on Twitter. I'm at dzdavis. And Erica or Jessica, if you wouldn't mind putting those in the Zoom chat. And Ebbe, I don't know if you want people reaching out, but please feel free to continue to ask us questions, throw us your ideas, fill out the post-event survey, and continue to engage with us even here in Second Life.
Yeah, my next meeting that I thought I had to go to now got moved, so I have another 30 minutes if you guys want. So for people that want to hang around, I can still be available for another 30 minutes, but it's up to you when you want to call it a day.
I think we might have to end our Zoom call, but if the folks that are in Second Life would like to continue to stay and carry on the chat, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'd love to hear from Erica on that.
Yes, unfortunately, we do have to end the Zoom call and recording. But yes, I left Donna's email address in case anyone on Zoom wants to continue the conversation. And obviously, you'll be getting our email, so reply to us directly later today or anytime if you have any questions. But thank you both so much. This was a great presentation and a great view into the virtual world.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, all of the folks in Zoom who are leaving. Thank you, Ebbe. Thank you, Brian, the folks at Linden Lab and the Mayo Clinic. Thank you to all of you who are in Second Life with us still. It looks like we'll stick around and keep chatting if you'd like to do that. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay healthy, stay safe, and go change the world.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Second Lifers, hang